Hello, everybody. This is Adam Williams, and you are listening or perhaps watching to another episode of Retail Redeveloped. Now, I've had a tremendous amount of retail thought leaders and cutting edge, bleeding edge technology companies and AI companies and you know think tank thought leadership guys on lately. And I'm very, very excited to not have one of those guys on today. I'm getting back to my roots, just talking down and dirty restaurants with Dan Simons. Who is he? He owns a group called Farmers Restaurant Group. I'm going to let him really tell you the nitty gritty about what they do and why they made sense to be on the show, because their DNA is a little different than your typical restaurant group. They do things, I would say, kind of the hard way. Maybe they would disagree. Maybe they'd say it's the only way. But Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. If you wouldn't mind, would you tell people a little bit about who you are, why should they care about the Farmers Restaurant Group, and just tell us a little bit about the why behind Farmers and behind your ethos and what you do and why.
Sure. Well, Adam, thanks for having me on the show today. I'm looking forward to the chat. Here's the thing with our company. My restaurants exist because of the mission. And so this is really what makes the company unique. And when I say the mission, that's not some lofty culinary idea. This is a true mission of the company. And that mission is to advocate on behalf of American family farmers, to try to represent the interests of American family farmers in public discourse, and to do it sort of through the plate and through a restaurant experience. And then to support American family farmers by buying as much product as we can from them, and then influencing the industry, restaurants, and the way folks shop, to go to farmers markets and to influence other restaurants to buy from independent family farmers. So my largest partner and the majority of our capital comes from American family farmers. So I have one restaurateur, his name's Michael Vakurovich, and he's my restaurateur partner. And then our capital partners, who actually own more of the company than I do, are American family farmers. And they are either individual farmers, just what you would think of, or farm organizations, primarily the North Dakota Farmers Union. So this is a mission-driven restaurant group. And while it's a for-profit company, the vast majority of our profits go back to farmers, either through purchases or through straight up equity distributions, like you would expect. So in 12 years, 13 years, we built the company to 7 restaurants. Pre-COVID, we had 1,100, 1,200 employees. Obviously, we've taken serious blows. We were a $85 million a year company pre-COVID. Now we're half of that. But we're still in the fight and working on behalf of the farmers that own the restaurant, and frankly, working on behalf of all independent farmers.
So on your website, and I have a lot of business partners, or I thought I had a lot of business partners. On your website, it says Farmers Restaurant Group is owned by 47,553 family farmers. Now, I have more business partners than fingers, and I think I need my head examined. Talk to me a little bit about why did you structure it this way, and just unpack that a little bit more for me. Help me and help the listeners or the watchers understand why you chose to do this and how it works.
So here's the good news from business structure standpoint. The vast majority of those 47 or 48,000 individual farmers, I deal with their governing body, which is their board of directors. And so they are represented, their investments are represented by a board of directors. So I deal with Mark Watney. He's a farmer in North Dakota and the president of the North Dakota Farmers Union. And then there's about 200 more individual farmers that invest. And then I have some non-farmer investors. And so I'm not beholden, to talk to 47,000 people on a weekly basis. And so we do, a lot of detailed reporting on a quarterly basis. And even though we're a private independent company, we try to have really, it's full transparency, lots of disclosure, but I'm dealing with a board of directors that represents the vast majority of them.
So, all right, let's go back. Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the structure, but let's go back to obviously you came up the ranks working for I'm assuming a corporate restaurant group. Walk me through your background, and if you wouldn't mind, spend a minute talking about, because this is an extremely odd setup, right? I talk to restaurateurs all the time. I know plenty, and this is the first time I've run across a structure that is like this. It's fairly unique. So if you wouldn't mind, go back in time, walk me through how you got started, how you got here, and then how you decided to structure a restaurant group in this way. Maybe that light bulb moment or aha moment when you decided to do things in an extremely unique way.
So, I came up in this business. It's the only industry that I know. I started working in bars and restaurants when I was in college. And I went to school in DC. And while other people were getting ready to graduate, going on to jobs that you go into an office building for and go up an elevator, by that point, I'd already fallen in love with the shift and bussing tables and, being in the kitchen or being in the front of the house. And so, yeah, I worked for other companies through my 20s. Front of the house manager, kitchen manager, sous chef, working my way up, general manager, regional manager, VP. I kind of built a career in my first decade, and I got to 30. And, it was just, I'd always dreamt of having my own business, having my own place. And so put my head together with one of my former bosses and mentors. We became partners and said, hey, let's do our own thing and open our own restaurants. So that's what sort of propelled me and built my career and my knowledge. I'm an operator, right? I know how to run these businesses, and that, for better or worse, I'm certainly not perfect at it. We opened our first restaurant. We thought we had some good experience. We had an idea. We raised funds, friends, family, and fools. And indeed, it turned out to be fools. Our first restaurant failed. We lost all our money. We were on the hook for $1 million that we'd signed for personally. As you sign personally on a lease. There's, you don't escape from that. You sign personally on a bank loan. You don't escape from that. So as we were digging out of that hole and doing some restaurant consulting and trying to figure out how we get our next restaurant open, because when you're in this business and it's all failure is just a moment in time. It's not a state, right? It's not an end game. And then I got lucky. We met some of these farmers from North Dakota. They had a vision of investing in restaurants. They knew that independent farmers are really under assault in America. Their share of the food dollar has been decreasing year after year after year for the last 50 years. And so they said, well, maybe if we weren't just growing the food, but we were also making money when the food was on the plate and we owned the restaurant as well. So we took their vision of wanting to have a farmer-owned restaurant with our vision of how to position the brand and do the operation and create it all. And it was just it was like whatever, peanut butter and chocolate. It's like this serendipitous coming together that was so fortunate for me and my partner. And, it's become our life's work. And so we opened the first one with them in 2008. And we've just grown from that point. But that's how we ended up coming together. Their vision, our experience, our sort of view for how to represent their vision. And so far, that's been the journey.
So you've grown it now. You said 7 restaurants or 8 restaurants?
7 restaurants, plus a distillery, plus a bakery.
7 restaurants, a distillery, bakery, DC based. Tell me how you were able to grow this concept from just, a crazy idea, with some crazy farmers and you and your partner up to this level. I mean, there's a lot of people that open 1 restaurant. There's not a lot of people that open 9. So walk me through that journey. Walk me through how you were able to grow this concept. I mean, 2008, you're giving me flashbacks of another, really fun time to be in business. Really fun time to raise funds to be in business. So how have you kind of vaulted yourself up to a little bit higher threshold and higher operator in some hard times?
There is something to be said for the businesses that are born in a recession. And so, we had convinced our farmer investors and farmer partners to put $5 million into this new idea. And then, the world was falling off a financial cliff, and we were opening a 9,000 square foot restaurant on Pennsylvania Avenue, downtown DC, and it was September 2008. So from day one, we built the brand around value. It was a downtown, high quality build out with, with a $10 hamburger. And so the other hamburgers downtown were, 15 or $18 in restaurants, and our hamburger was better. We knew where the meat came from. We ground the meat in house. We had our own bakery, and we made our own bun. We knew the farmer that we bought the potatoes from, and we made those potatoes fresh in-house. And so it was a value play. Every other restaurant was charging, $8 or $7 for a bottle of, Evian. And we said, it's bad for the planet. It's bad for the customer. It's bullshit, right? Like, you're taking water from Paris in a glass bottle made in China. You're shipping it around the world. You're ripping the customer off for $8, and you're ripping the planet off when you throw the bottle away. So we opened that restaurant and we said, let's make it about value. Let's keep our average check down. Let's give the guest a better experience, and let's tell this farming story. So even as the world fell off that financial cliff, the restaurant was really well received. And I think our message, it was a good time to be kind of back to basics, down home. People like fried chicken and waffles, and people like cornbread, and people like comfort food. We've got a wide ranging menu. People like pasta, and they like that we made it from scratch. So I think that was really the foundation. And then, look, Adam, you're a business guy. Capital comes with strings attached. I don't care whether you're doing a real estate deal, you're building a building, you're building land, you're buying a restaurant, whatever you're doing. Capital comes with expectations. It comes with control. And if you don't choose your source of capital wisely, and you don't understand the strings attached, you end up, when you hit hard times, getting yanked in a direction you don't want to go. Our capital came with strings attached, but they were mission-driven strings. So through thick and thin, hard times and not, my farmer partners say, stay the course. And that's what's helped us build a company. I call it conscious capitalism. It's not about short-term profits. It's about long-term profits and walking your talk and being principle-centered leaders. And that's been the recipe we've used.
So something else that I thought was interesting when I was kind of digging around online about you before we spoke was just how you put a normal piece of food. I mean, you use the example with Evian. You're getting water from Paris. You're getting a bottle from China. But the ones that really struck me was you kind of broke down what was in a normal piece of food that you would order from a typical restaurant versus what is in you guys' food. I think the example was just a simple chocolate chip cookie, right? Like there's 35 ingredients from the one you get at the grocery store, and you guys probably has 5. Walk me through how you guys are able to simplify things while keeping an accessible price point, because those two usually don't mix. Normally there's a bunch of crap in all the stuff we eat because it's cheaper to do it that way as opposed to just using real ingredients. So how are you guys able to figure out both sides of the coin there?
It starts with a fundamental belief in people and talent. So while the rest of the industry for the last couple of decades has been pushing towards, frozen food, more chemicals, extended shelf life, and get robots in the kitchen and get as low a labor cost as possible and sort of eliminate as many employees as possible, we're doing the opposite. We believe that employees are where the magic happens, and that if you can build an enterprise that sees the aptitude in people and develops them and gives them career paths, that you can do amazing things. So the truth is, it isn't more expensive to cook from scratch. It's just more complicated, right? It's easier to buy frozen cookie dough, throw it in the oven and do it. But It's not necessarily cheaper and it's not necessarily better. Once you get some scale and we do some pretty high volume and you believe in your talent, your people become really highly productive and your customer rewards you because your food is better. And so we also keep our staff a long time. You know, if you get bored cooking for us, you can move into the bakery. If you're ready for another challenge, you can work in the distillery. And this career path and growth. So I connect this ability to cook from scratch. You know, when we sell popcorn to table, right, and it's seasoned or it's the popcorn flavor of the month or it's a caramel corn or whatever it is, we cook that order of popcorn to order. And so people would say, well, that's crazy. How, you know, you got one guy standing there, you know, like with the whirly pop machine over the hot stove. But once you just commit to it, and then that flavor of actually fresh popcorn with non-GMO, you know, corn is getting to the table, the guests love it, the staff loves doing it. And so, you know, it really makes me sad when I look, frankly, at all of the shit that's put into the supply chain. I don't think it's fair for what people get. You assume, well, it's for sale, it's okay, right? It's food, it should be safe. It's not. So you can unbundle the supply chain, cook from scratch, and do it profitably. You just have to go all in, and you have to believe in the talent of your people because it is more difficult to do all of this cooking every day.
So how have you guys moved into? You mentioned the distillery, the bakery. You know, has this all been just a natural organic process where you're kind of weaving these different somewhat, I mean, obviously the bakery is tied in, but some of these unrelated enterprises, I mean, how have you kind of continued to grow and continue to branch out, and what challenges has, well, I mean, I guess there's a million challenges that have been brought to the forefront in 2020, but how have you guys A, grown, and then B, how are you sustaining during 2020 madness?
So we grow sort of with these new ideas and with new restaurants at a rate of which we're capable. And so this is the beauty of having mission-driven capital. I'm not trying to fill a pipeline. I'm not trying to scale. I'm not trying to hit a certain thing. We're just trying to deliver on the mission, and we're trying to create an awesome employee experience, which leads to an awesome guest experience. And so for Mike and I, my partner, Mike, we just, I don't know, we have a phrase, everything's personal, everything matters. And so I'm not going to put something on the plate unless I want my kids to eat it. Okay, well, then we better have our own bakery, right? Because it's really hard to get good bread out of the typical supply chain. And so, you know, we happen to have some baking experience, and we had some team members, some folks we could add to our team. And so as we add skills or we learn new things, like we just launched a whole new line of chocolates. Why? Because like you're saying, you know, COVID adversity, I got to create more products to sell. Well, my partner Mike's got a passion for chocolate. We worked on a chocolate concept years ago. We had a little bit of knowledge. Our culinary team was excited. We dug into it, and it didn't take much money, and we launched our line of chocolates. So it's really been about what do we either have the knowledge for, someone on our team has the skill, what are we excited about and we can dive into and get the resources. Sometimes it's related to a product. You know, our farmer partners in North Dakota bought an 18-wheeler, and so we're able to get certain unique products from the heartland straight into the mid-Atlantic at almost zero distribution cost, or at a nonprofit distribution. So, you know, we're bringing this amazing honey from North Dakota, from Nick and Tawny, these two bee farmers that run a big apiary out there. And so that gives me this unique honey at a great cost to the farmer, to the producer, a great cost to me. And now I can use that honey in my recipes, in our Amaro, which we make in our distillery. So it's been about, I think, what are we capable of? Where are the ideas? What can we pull off? And then what are our guests interested in? And, you know, COVID difficulties, look, it sucks. You know, it has been awful. It's an awful time to be in our business. But maybe it's a great time to be in our business because we got to fight to keep our people employed. We got to fight to get our people back to work. And for us, we got to fight to keep the money flowing back upstream to the farmers and the suppliers. And so I'd rather be in the fight than on the sideline. And this is a fight that needs to be fought on behalf of the workers and the farmers. So, adversity is adversity. This adversity sucks, but you find a way through it if you've got a team with really deep culture.
What's been the biggest learning experience to come out of this? I mean, I've talked to so many people that have completely shifted their business practice over the last 6 or 8 months. For example, I use this one a lot. A lot of my friends that own breweries, were drunk off of that tap room money because the margins are incredible. And within a month, they had a full canning line and were distributing all over the state. A lot of people I use the example of Chipotle a lot. I mean, if you looked at Chipotle's website and their app, the day before the shutdown versus 30 days after the shutdown, it was a completely different experience. They've completely adapted. And now, I'd be shocked if they're not getting high double-digit growth out of their online platform. What have you guys been able to do or react or just learn from that maybe would have never been on the forefront 8 months ago, but through necessity, you guys really had to step it up or kind of turn on a dime?
The big lesson, and I don't think it's the first time I learned it, but let's call it a hardcore reminder, is the fragility of business. And I think we've also seen the fragility of society. As an entrepreneur, look, it. There's no promise that your business is going to exist tomorrow. There's no promise that you're going to be able to make your personal mortgage payment next month. And so I think what this has reminded us and shown us is that it doesn't matter what you may have built or accomplished in your business or your family or your community. Life is unrelenting and unpredictable. And so for me, that lesson is stay nervous, stay humble, and think about, resiliency, which is different than being resilient. Like resiliency to me is building flexibility into your thought process. And, as a restaurateur, pre-COVID, I still went to work scared every day, right? Like as a business owner, I'm sure you feel that same thing. And so the fear that I have had throughout my career, I still have. And I hope the mistake that I don't make is ever getting so comfortable, because then you're not ready for that next punch. So COVID, I think, has reminded all of us, there's a punch coming. And so, then you adapt, you sell different stuff, you change your business, like you said, whether it's, what you do with how you make a product or where you distribute it or direct to consumer. We've launched a whole, shipping via UPS and USPS mail order around the country, these farm gift boxes. And we've launched this whole chocolate line. Ask me 9-10 months ago, did I think I'd be doing that? No.
You got to stop talking about chocolate, man. I have the worst dark chocolate sweet tooth. I'm literally going to press pause in the interview and go grab a piece of dark chocolate. So we got to change that subject.
I'll send you a box. But I mean, think about all of the stuff you've seen with change. I think we all needed to be this capable of change. You just don't know when you're going to need it. And so that's the reminder that I think we all gotta keep with us.
You're a mission-driven guy. That's very obvious. Walk me through some of your passion projects. I've read through a few of them, and I know you've got a lot of things that are near and dear to your heart. I'd love for you to just explain to people, one or two of your pet causes that you're really passionate about.
Man, if I had a couple of wishes, I would totally change the game with single-use plastics. I am really worried about what we are doing to the planet, what we're doing to human health. I think there's a few people at the top of the, sort of plastic world that are, make gazillions in profit while we poison the planet and poison the population. And there are solutions and things we can do. So that's a real passion of mine. And I think you got to start small, right? So like not using plastic straws is a good start. Thinking about changes to the supply chain with to-go food. Looking in the mirror and acknowledging that my business is part of the plastics problem, right? Especially now with all this to-go food, being honest of where I'm a hypocrite, and then spending energy up through the supply chain and with researchers to look for solutions. So that's one thing that I'm really working on. And then another is, mental health. Our industry is a difficult and challenging place for people with mental health concerns, for a variety of reasons. And let's just put mental health and substance abuse in the same category for the sake of this. So I work a lot on internally building a company where we can talk about it, and like, look, I see a therapist, and I deal with anxiety, and I've got my own personal sort of mental issues around, ironically, food and sort of eating disorders and body dysmorphia. And I think it would be really nice to see society really push in this direction of, having difficulties in your mind is no different than having a sprained ankle. Right. And so like, great, who do you need? Go see a doctor, get some help, talk to a buddy, vent about it. So we work on mental health inside our company, being a place where it's safe to say things like what I just said. Adam, there is nobody walking around out there that doesn't have some, mental health concern, self-doubt, whatever it is. And everybody's taught to kind of cover it up and hide it. And I want to try to rip that off and fuck it, let's just work on it together.
And why do you think that is? I did an episode a few months ago with a therapist friend. There's the puppy that I warned you about.
Love it.
Yeah, she might really go off here in a second. With a local therapist in Charlotte that specializes in, I don't want to say specializes, but a large part of his practice is commercial real estate professionals. And I was shocked at the amount of people that reached out to me after this episode aired and said like, hey, like I needed to hear that, or, my buddy needed to hear that, or something to that effect. And I was shocked that it seemed so taboo. And he phrased it similar to you about the sprained ankle. He's like, yeah, you're injured. You go and see a doctor and nobody blinks an eye, but we're all, is it a machismo thing? Is it part of that self-doubt? What is it do you think that keeps people from opening up about that, and to your point, just what you said there, somebody else could hear that, and that could make a huge difference, just knowing that this successful guy that's mission driven and has grown a wildly successful restaurant group with thousands of partners and large companies trusting him with their money, saying like, hey, I got issues just like everybody else. Why is it that is so taboo?
I think it's a lack of education. We should be teaching mental health, starting in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and we should be teaching that mental health is just health, right? So there's health, and then we can talk about physical health, right? We could talk about bones and soft tissue and ligaments. We could talk about mental health, which is, the brain function and brain chemistry. Great. Let's talk about health, and let's talk about it through a sense of wellness. And we don't do that. So we're not taught that at a young age in America. And it's not really taught in most homes. And so then all the typical stuff gets attached to it, right? So you've got the tough guy issue, the machismo issue. You've got, making yourself attractive while you're dating. And so you want to like show your best self. Now you've got, this sort of false paradigm of social media, where do you want to go online and tell people you feel depressed today? Probably not. So I think it starts with education. And then like a lot of things, it starts with courage or role models. I mean, think about it on, you know, if my issue was, you know, LGBTQ awareness, I would tell you, like, God, do you know how many pro athletes are something other than typically heterosexual, but they're worried it's going to ruin their career, you know? So topics have these ridiculous stigmas, and it takes role models to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute. And then it becomes so obvious. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I got issues too. Yeah, man, they're not issues. They're just life, right? Like every single one of us has it. So I think it starts with education, and then we need role models to talk about it. And I do think that as a society, we can make progress really quickly.
So switching back to, you know, operations and restaurants, how do you guys continue to drive innovation? Like, how do you foster a culture of innovation, and how do you keep that at the forefront?
Step one is like remove the fear of failure. That's why I say, you know, failure is just a moment in time and part of the process of getting to the wins. And so I have plenty of ideas that turn out to suck. So what? They're, you know, I can talk a lot about chocolate, and I have been lately, because I think it represents a really good sort of surprise innovation. And I know it's, you know, freaking you out.
No more chocolate, man. You're killing me.
But I could also tell you about 7 other things that we tried to do that didn't pan out, or business ventures that I explored. So we stay innovative in the company, I think, with a combination of feel safe to try something that fails. And then we've promised ourselves, and it's written in our company constitution, we've got kind of an 8-page manifesto that we wrote for ourselves. We're not trying to be a chain. We're not trying to be the same. We're not trying to replicate and scale. And so we've promised ourselves we'll keep innovating. And for us, that's what's fun. I don't want to run 50 or 60 of the same restaurant over and over. To me, that is wicked boring. I would quit my job. And I actually think the highest level talent really wants to be where there's innovation, where you're doing new stuff and you're changing things, and you're not just like stamping out and do the same thing over and over. So the innovation draws in the talent, keeps it exciting. You make everybody feel safe. And I think that sort of feeds itself.
So I wouldn't be a good real estate human if I didn't ask, you know, what gets you location? You know, what are some of the main things that you look for when you're thinking about opening a new store? And obviously, some of it's going to be concept based, but what really gets you excited? You mentioned Pennsylvania Avenue. That's really straightforward. But what goes through your mind when you're thinking about a new location and making it successful?
So I intentionally try to not follow the sheep. None of my restaurants are at the corner of Main and Main. None of them are what, at the time we signed our deal and did our deal, were sort of obvious places. So Pennsylvania Avenue sounds great. We opened on the corner of 20th and Penn 12 years ago at sort of an edge of a neighborhood called Foggy Bottom. That is a super weird location that nobody would have said was a good restaurant location. Would have been good for kind of Monday through Friday lunch. And so I like good deals. I would rather pay less, get a sweet TI package, lower my risk, give my landlord upside with percentage rent over the long haul, and feel that the burden's on us to create this compelling experience that the customer wants to come to. So I don't believe really in the adage of, you know, location in the way that I think historically that has been said, especially the way real estate prices went up. And in our industry, you know, pre-COVID, the typical restaurant real estate deal, pretty bad deal for the restaurants. So I've tried to stay away from those, and I think that has served us well. And it means sometimes you got to grow into a location. But that's what gets me excited when I see opportunity that isn't totally visible and therefore isn't reflected in a high rent.
Dan, you've already been really, really gracious with your time. And would you take a second and just explain to people where they can find out more about what you're doing, what your partners are doing, the mission behind what you're doing? Just explain to people how they can connect with you and hear more about what you have to say.
Lots more information at farmersrestaurantgroup.com or directly at foundingfarmers.com. If you want to see one of our pivots during COVID, it's foundingfarmersmarket.com. And then I have my own website, which is dansimonsays.com, where I blog and share information, where I represent my restaurants, but I tackle some of these other issues I'm passionate about.
All right, one last question before I let you go. There's a quote on your page that says there are 168 hours in a week. You should be sleeping 56 of those hours. That leaves 112 hours or 6,720 minutes to do what matters. How do you stay hard, keep your edge, and keep that focus level after you've been doing it for an entire career? How do you stay pumped up and stay ready to tackle the day every day, one after another?
Over a decade ago, I got one of the best and most difficult lessons I ever learned when my brother-in-law, who'd been a close part of our family since I was a little kid, was killed in a helicopter crash. And the gift that gave me was knowing that every day, every minute matters. You have it while you have it. And so I decided from that point forward that I needed to live a life with no regrets. And I figured the only way I could do that would be to decide the most important things to me, and then understand how I'm going to use those 168 hours in a week. I knew that sleep is a good part for optimum human health. So I sort of allocate those out, and I just started try to stay true to what are the things that are most important, and I allocate my time to those, and those change over time. For me right now with teenage boys, that's really important to me. So my roles, my mom is 83 years old. That time is important to me. My employees, my team, some of the time that I like to, watch a Star Trek episode or watch The Mandalorian on my own. And so I look at those 112 hours each week. I plan ahead, and I'm comfortable saying no to things. And I think that's a big part of being disciplined.
So underrated.
Yeah.
Saying no is vastly underrated.
Vastly underrated. And I think when you help folks have the confidence to say no and really define what they say yes to, they start to have the time for the things that really matter.
Well, Dan, I just want to take a second and acknowledge you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing wisdom, sharing hard lessons, sharing things that aren't always fun to talk about, and just your level of honesty about COVID, about challenges, about how you guys have dealt with it. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that needed to hear that. And I just appreciate you coming on and your level of honesty.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.